Greetings, my friends. Welcome to the next episode of the Mint Mob Podcast. Jason here, joined by my buddy Alex across the pond in Germany. We're going to jump into a few topics related to GoodFellas at the end. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about collecting and check in with Alex. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
Hey man, I'm doing great. I'm kind of discovering the internet again after I had some issues over the past week. I'm still having some issues, but I found some solutions, kind of like evolving here. But yeah, great to be back on podcast. Obviously, always sad when we miss an episode. Great to be back. Of course, a lot of things to talk about, to jump into, and today we are talking about something that's been on my mind ever since I had a conversation with someone a few days ago. I actually wanted to touch on that topic on Spaces already, because it kind of continues the conversation we had on the last podcast episode. So we started talking about collecting, and I mentioned that I collect digital art. So I asked the guy, who was, by the way, a customer, in my office. I asked him if he'd ever collected anything himself, and he immediately said yes. He used to be a huge movie collector. By the way, I gotta mention that he was like probably 55, 56, something around that age. So he said that back in the 80s, the 90s, he collected hundreds of DVDs probably. Like, I don't know, when did we get DVDs? Probably early 2000s, right? So he probably collected videotapes as well. But he even like collected all the way into like Blu-rays, which happened around 2010, I guess. So he absolutely loved building that collection of certain DVDs and Blu-rays and movies. But then at some point, Netflix happened, and he told me something that really stuck with me. He said, once everyone had access to every movie through a subscription, my collection somehow stopped feeling special. So eventually he stopped collecting altogether, and that got me thinking, can a collection market actually die? Not because, people stop loving the subject, but because technology changes the way we consume it, right? It's not just movies, of course. It's some people had not movies. It's also like music. Some people had big collections of CDs and albums and all that stuff back in the days. So if that happens to music, to movies, could it happen to books, to watches, to trading cards, maybe even to digital art? And that's what I'd like to explore today. So yeah, we can jump right in. So the question here would be, did Netflix kill movie collecting? I don't actually think there's an obvious answer. On one hand, movie collecting probably became far less common. On the other hand, there are still people paying thousands for rare editions. I actually went on eBay and I checked whether there are someone offers like Titanic first edition on a videotape, still sealed, and you find all that stuff on the internet, and people seem to pay a lot of money for that still. But or maybe Netflix did not kill collecting; it simply changed who the collectors are. So, what's your impression? Do you think technology destroys collecting, or does it filter out casual collectors and leave only the true passionate ones?
Yeah, I think what you said makes a lot of sense. It basically, in the example that you used in terms of movies, you answered your own question. Like, it basically shifted who collects what, right? And that's the thing. I mean, it still exists. It still exists in one form or another, and the things that people are considering desirable will always be desirable, and the rarer and more, difficult to come by they are, of course, the more desirable they're going to be and the more money they're going to be worth over time. But again, that's one aspect of that marketplace. I mean, I've got a ton of DVDs still. I've got a ton of CDs. And although I don't necessarily use them, I keep them and I hold on to them. And there's some titles in there that I keep for, just nostalgia's sake. And there's some titles in there that I keep because I think that, at some point I might want to just have a quiet house someplace out away from everything, and the only way to watch something would be through a DVD player, or listen to something would be through a CD player. Just to enjoy that aspect of life more disconnected and more connected with the people that I would be spending time with, right? So, I mean, all kinds of different reasons to collect, And I think that your example perfectly illustrates that. And I think that's true of all markets, right? So, like DVDs are one. You could go back even further to VHS tapes, and from that you could go back into like the reels, and then from that you can go into the cameras. Like people collect all of those stuff, all of the things that made movies special to them, like whatever era or whatever time frame that they came from, that they feel some sort of affinity toward. Like they want those things, and even when you think about it, people who collect things, a lot of the older like movie cameras, that's a really highly collectible market depending on what era it came from. And even in like nowadays, if you go into like antique shops or furniture stores, you'll find people selling like antique like movie reels or cameras or films as decorations. So there's all kinds of reasons that people might want to acquire or collect a thing, and there's always going to be some sort of value there. As long as there are people on the planet, there's always going to be someone who's interested in that particular niche. So I don't think it ever really goes away. It might just look different.
Yeah, absolutely. And like from a collector's perspective, as you're someone who actively collects, would easier access ever make you like less interested in owning something?
Easy access definitely makes it less interesting for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
for sure.
But like when I think about all the other markets available, like whether you think about what was like popular back in the day, stamps. Some people even collected phone cards, obviously DVDs, comic books. We've spoken so much about comic books, and nowadays we have NFTs, of course. So it seems like every collecting category seems to go like through phases. Something becomes popular, everyone wants it, the market explodes, then interest kind of fades. Sometimes it disappears, sometimes it stays big. So do you feel like collecting markets have like a life cycle? Like do all collecting markets eventually peak, or are some categories timeless?
That's a good question. I don't know that there's anything that doesn't cycle. I haven't seen anything that doesn't cycle in my lifetime. I mean, there's things that are more or less desirable at different times, but always still exist or always ever present. Like for example, blue jeans. Like a pair of Levi's is a pair of Levi's is a
Mm-hmm.
pair of Levi's, right? And almost anywhere you go in the world, like back in the day, um, when I was a kid, there were people who would actually sell Levi's overseas because they couldn't get them in certain areas, and they would sell the jeans for like 3 and 4 and 500% what they would be worth here. And there were like black markets for jeans. So like I can't think of a single era where there hasn't been a thing that people were getting, but I can think of different times when it was explosive or not explosive. Like the jeans example is one. Baseball cards at the late 80s, early 90s, before they like overproduced them and killed the whole market. And then of course now all of the cards are back. Cards are, there's some cards selling for 6 figures that really aren't that old, but just happen to be,
Mm.
very rare or desirable. Same thing with Pokemon cards and, Magic cards and that sort of thing. So, I mean, everything cycles to some degree, but I don't think, as long as there's a group of people who are like tied to the nostalgia of the thing, no matter what age they are, they're bound by the art of collecting. And I think that's the beautiful thing about it. It just unites so many people for so many different reasons. So yeah, cycles for sure in terms of peaks and valleys, but does it ever go away? Probably not. I can't think of anything that's like literally died. I mean, there's people who collect pretty much anything you can imagine, from bottle caps all the way through to, like early radios that were made out of plastic. Like name the thing, there's somebody who collects it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if we like dive into digital art now and try to see what could be a threat there, for the collecting market, obviously it's never going to die. There will always be people collecting digital art, but just to think of potential threats, like whether we have technology, of course, like we've spoken so much about, whether AI is a threat. By the way, definitely keep an eye out for Friday Spaces where we will have Creepy Steve with us. We will dive into that topic as well. But yeah, what else do we got? Oversupply, maybe changing culture, maybe what we spoke about last time about like the next generation losing interest. maybe even economic conditions. Like which one do you think is like the biggest threat, especially for digital art?
For digital art, I don't know that any of those things are applicable yet because it hasn't really gained a large enough foothold for it
Hmm.
to really be ubiquitous, meaning, everywhere you go. I mean, there's someone, around the world who's collecting digital art, no matter where you go, but it's not like it's on, every street corner where you talk to someone and they're like, oh yeah, I was, down at the store the other day and I was talking to a friend and they told me about this digital artist and I had to go buy some of their stuff as soon as I got home. That doesn't happen, but that happened for,
Yeah.
comics and cards and cars and all the rest of the stuff. Right. And, at some point when these things become ubiquitous, maybe you have those conversations and you have to worry about that sort of thing. But I don't think we're there yet. It's still a newer technology. Crypto still hasn't been widely adopted by the mass populace. And of course, the act of collecting something on a cryptographic chain is just like a foreign concept for most people. So I think there's just a long way to go before people accept that this is a new reality. Because, I mean, even a lot of the younger kids who know about crypto don't hold any. They're not actively trading it. They're not actively buying it. They're not actively pursuing NFTs. And so I think at the end of the day, there's going to be a tremendous opportunity to expose, traditional collectors from comics or cards or art or whatever into NFTs. But we haven't gotten there yet. So I think it's a little bit premature to think in the terms that you originally proposed.
Yeah, that's true. And going back to the beginning of the topic and the conversation, one thing that was quite interesting and stood out was, when we spoke about the idea of something like Netflix was killing DVD and movie collectors, the guy said the only thing nowadays he still keeps collecting are and I'm not sure if it's the right like pronunciation in English, but vinyls. The music you play on. How are the players called? I don't know.
You're talking about record players?
Maybe. Yeah, exactly. So
Vinyl? Yeah.
that's actually the interesting part because like technology somehow even made those collectibles stronger because streaming didn't completely kill vinyl, right? In many ways, it made vinyl cooler.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at other things like, I don't know, smartphones didn't kill mechanical watches, right? They turned them more into luxury items.
That's right.
Or digital photography didn't eliminate film cameras, right? Like you still have people using them, especially now. I see a lot of people actually wanting to have these little Polaroid cameras where you get like the tangible photography, and yeah, like it looks like something can become more like collectible after, I don't want to say it stops being useful, but it's probably nostalgia and all that stuff that people, listening to a vinyl in some way is a lot cooler than, just turning on Spotify, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, it's like anything. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. Like when it comes to collectibles, when it comes to the value of having a collection, it's not necessarily monetary. It could be experiential, right? There's all different types of currency.
Yeah.
Your time is a currency, your experience is a currency, money as a currency is the one that everyone thinks of. But when you're with a group of people and, like we had a family over here last November for a wedding. And, it was funny because we have a record player here in the room, and so we were playing records and people were just having fun with it because it's not something that they do on a regular basis. Everybody's so used to downloading an MP3 and, connecting with Bluetooth to, whatever stereo is in the house and then playing it. And, we were playing these records and we have to get up and go flip the record or put a new one on, right? And there's just something about that experience, something about the sound, something about the crackle that comes through, when you have needle, touching the vinyl record that people really enjoy. And that experience wasn't something that was commoditized in that moment. It was something that was special. It was something that, people had had knowledge of, but haven't experienced in some time. And because of that, it made it a more interesting and rich experience. So the currency in that, or the payoff in that, was just being able to provide someone an experience that they hadn't had in a while. And a lot of times this is what collectibles do. They take you to that place of nostalgia. They take you to this place of feeling, like you're at home, or feeling in community, or feeling attached to a memory, or whatever the case may be. But that sense of nostalgia, that sense of homecoming, is never going to go away. People are always going to want to have that. And this is, I think, probably even more prevalent today because, when you look across the landscape of communications and how people interact with one another, most social media interactions are pretty shallow, and most of those relationships are disposable. And this is why, people have block buttons. In the real life, if you have an issue with someone, you would have to physically avoid them or either make peace with them. But if you're dealing with someone online, it's basically disposable. In some cases, like if you're on X, like you might even not know what the person looks like, So at the end of the day, if you have disposable relationships and you have no real connection and no depth in your communication, then this is the thing that's lacking, and this is the thing that you're going to want to seek out. And maybe you find it in a small circle of people in the real world, or maybe you find it by, traveling down memory lane and purchasing toys from childhood, or sharing those toys with your kids or their kids, or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, it's the rare experiences that people value the most. And so I think whatever market you look at, there's going to be some way of creating that rare experience.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, looking at like vinyls or film cameras, I mean, people have used these for decades. And, that kind of creates that nostalgia when people turn these gadgets on nowadays. But what makes a digital collectible survive technological change? Like, do you think it's the artist, the community, the story, or something else entirely? Like if an NFT project is building something that is meant to last, what does it need to get right today, in your opinion?
Well, I think the NFTs can come at the collectibles market from a bunch of different ways. So, I think the sort of like the soft sell introduction to NFTs right now is Fidgetals, because you can take, there are several companies right now who are taking physical collectibles and then they're tokenizing them and then they're holding them in a vault for you. So in the same way that the futures market works, right? Like you buy a contract for gold or silver or oil or pork bellies or whatever, but you never actually take possession of it unless you choose to, right? Same thing with Fidgetals. It's the literally exact same, sort of functionality of the commodities market. And so like you buy a baseball card, or you buy, some collectible piece of art, or, a toy or a coin or something like that that's held in a vault. And you hold the NFT, which grants you a right to it. So you could actually keep it and take possession of it, or you could just sit back and trade. Yellow. Did I lose you?
That was probably on my end.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's just continue. That wasn't a good ending for the episode, so let's continue.
Yeah. Let's pick up where we left off. Do you remember the question that you asked?
We were speaking about the how, like, what makes a digital collectible survive technological change, I think.
Okay.
Like I think I asked, like, if an NFT project's built something that's meant to last, like what does it need to get right today?
Okay. So this happened at about the 18-minute mark. So when you're going through.
Okay, let me just note it. 18 minutes.
Yeah,
All right.
I know it's probably like a minute into an answer, but anyway. So I'll just start over, and I'm just going to pause and go back into it.
Okay.
So I think the thing that makes the NFT market a little bit different is that you can come at collectibles from a bunch of different angles, right? And by this, I mean that, for example, probably one of the easiest ways in for the traditional collector is through Fidgetals. And this is one of the things that's happening right now in the marketplace, where you've got companies who are buying physical collectibles like baseball cards or art or coins or toys or whatever, and they're vaulting these things for you. So they're holding them on site someplace and you have an NFT that guarantees that you own it. Your NFT is a claim on that thing that they're holding in a vault for you. And you can take possession if you want, or you can just hold the NFT and trade the NFT around, right? So it gives you like a different sort of angle into a particular collectibles market and makes the collectibles market more liquid. So you could, like I said, you could take possession or you can trade it, whatever you want to do. It's up to you. So it gives you more of an opportunity to interact with the global community. And it basically operates just like the commodities market, right? So just like if you're going to buy gold or silver, or corn or soybeans or oil or pork bellies, like most of the time when people are buying a futures contract, they're not actually taking possession of the thing that they're buying. They're just buying the contract that guarantees them access to it. And if they want to take possession, they can, but really what they're doing is that they're banking that they're going to be able to sell it to a higher bidder later on, right? And that's the same thing that's happening with the fidgetals market. The fidgetals market basically just duplicates the commodities market, the traditional commodities market. So you've got more ways in, and this gives you a use case that a traditional collectible wouldn't have. So that's one thing. The other thing too is when it comes to digital collectibles, you've got scarcity baked in, you've got the ability to trade or work with anyone globally baked in, again, because again, you have global marketplaces that trade, or, you can work deals or trade piece for piece with someone, worldwide, globally, depending on, your reach and the size of your project. So like, it's not like baseball cards when you were a kid and you traded with, everybody in your class, or, like vinyl records, many of which have gone through the roof, where you could maybe sell them to the local record store. And if you had something that was really super valuable, you might send it to an auction or something like that. So all of these things give you like more ways to interact with the technology. And so it's not just a technology, it's not just a collectible, it's some combination of the two. And we haven't really explored all the different ways that that combination of items could actually be used in the real world. So fidgetals is one, right? A global marketplace is another. Baked in scarcity, like if you're creating collections like we have at GoodFellas, there's going to be pieces that are more rare than others, of course, right? Yeah. So you can basically, at any point in time, make the collection be whatever it needs to be to survive that time period that you're in. So I don't know that there's an expiration date on the potential that you have for digital collectibles. And I don't really think, again, because adoption hasn't really accelerated for like NFTs the way it has for cryptocurrencies, I really don't think much of the real collecting population has even been exposed to them outside of maybe having a basic knowledge of what they are. So until we get to the place where you have wider adoption, you won't really see all the benefits that you can create from like owning an NFT project or owning NFTs themselves or trading with other people. Because again, like we've only scratched the surface of what's possible. So while, much of the world has gotten smaller with things like eBay or Amazon, where, if you live in the middle of the country, let's say you're in Iowa and you collect, I don't know, like turn of the century phonographs or something, right? And there's some guy in California that collects turn of the century phonographs and he wants to buy yours. You can list it on eBay, right? So the world has gotten smaller. That collector community can kind of support itself. But that behavior didn't exist prior to the internet, whereas like the collectibles that are being created on the internet start with that already baked in, right? So you're already starting with a marketplace. And I think that starting with the marketplace is a huge advantage relative to other things that had to create a marketplace long after the fact, because it gives you the ability to develop a collector base and a buyer base in the early part or the infancy of your project or the infancy of your particular collectible, whether it happens to be digital or phygital or some combination of something else, So I think you just have more options and more angles to come at the collector market with. And that's going to like cushion anyone who's like a good operator and paying attention to the marketplace and paying attention to trends. If you give someone who's smart and a good operator options, they're going to be fine in pretty much any market. And that doesn't mean that, the prices or the availability of a given collectible won't go up and down over time. It just means that there'll be more ways to smooth out the curve, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay, but let's shift away from regular NFT projects and just speak about artists, because if you look at what artists do, they usually do not really run a project. All they do is try to sell their art, and and I mean, we've spoken about that many times already, but obviously through AI, people will be able to generate, beautiful images in seconds. We've said that many times already. So one big threat might be dilution at some point, right? Like we can have thousands of different art pieces at a time, and dropped on X, and people will try to sell. New artists will be there, claim they are AI artists. Some will maybe not even disclose that it's AI created. So, like you mentioned, that there are a lot of different things that need to be done in order to to exist sustainably, whether it's building connections to your collectors, um, the things we do, for example, like we provide utility to people, for them to be able to build their own galleries and create marketplaces and all that. But doesn't all that push the skill involved in creating art into the background? Like, is it healthy for the market if artists can no longer stand out through their art?
So you're talking about dilution in terms of like more artists being on chain, like more like the amount of people who can create art is just going to get to the point where it's very difficult for anyone to shine through. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, let's just make an example. Like let's say you have someone like I don't know. Let's say who's like a great artist. Let's invent one. Let's take Anna Shi, for example. Like she has a very distinctive style. Um, she creates very unique and great art pieces. So at some point, there will be so many artists on X like dropping beautiful art pieces that may be AI generated, but in the end, that leads to the fact that Anna Shi is not really standing out anymore because her art is great, or because it's outstanding, because it kind of goes under in all that beautiful art that is on the timelines. And shouldn't an artist be able to stand out, showing their artwork?
So you're referring to the fact that with an AI model that you could train to create pieces in the vein of or in the style of a particular artist, that particular...
Not necessarily. I mean, it's just about dilution in terms of tons of beautiful art, and like not like the traditional skill set required to be able to hand draw it. Because in the end, if an artist sits down, needs like 10 hours to create a beautiful piece, and then there will be people creating a beautiful piece in seconds, there, like, in my opinion, that might lead to dilution. I mean, in the end, obviously, you need enough collectors still, but it becomes more important to have connections to your collectors, and still spark that. I think you made a pretty good description of that in the conversation you had with Creepy Steve. I think you said that a creation needs to spark something in someone, and this might be something that, like let's say from a collector's standpoint, do you have a certain feeling when you collect a piece and you see it on your timeline, where you feel like, okay, this means something to me emotionally, that I want to collect and own it?
Of course. I mean, I think all collecting is based on that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like okay, let's put the question in a different direction. Like, when you collect a piece and when you see a beautiful piece on your timeline, does it matter at all who the artist is? Like, or not? Like, do you look at the artist who created the piece when you feel like you want to collect it, and it sparks some emotion in yourself?
I think it works the other way around. I think the first thing that draws you in is the art, right? And then you attach the art to the artist. So you might say, I like this particular piece speaks to me. Like Anna Shee's piece speaks to me, for example. We'll use Anna. And
Yeah.
therefore, I look at the piece, I'm drawn to it. I see, okay, who created this? Oh, it's Anna Shee. Okay, well, now I'm going to be more likely to pay attention to her timeline because I know that she's created pieces in the past that speak to me.
Yeah, I totally get that. All right, let's say you see a piece on your timeline that you love. You click on like the PFP, and it's like, I don't know, 5 followers, and it sells the piece for $100, and the profile hasn't been really active. Like, does all that matter when it comes to like buying for you?
I mean, if I really like the piece, no, not really. I mean, if I really like the piece, for all I know, it's someone who never had an X account. Like I never had an X account until I got into NFTs. And, I mean, honestly, if the piece is good and I can get in contact with the artist and I can purchase it, then that's what I'm going to do. And if they have 5 followers, but they don't have if they're talented and they have 5 followers, then that just means that they're new. And so for me, that means, okay, well, maybe I can get better art at a lower price. Maybe they'll be willing to give this piece to me that I like at a lower price than a different artist. Okay, cool. That's a win for me and a win for them because they get a sell and I get a better price on something that I love, right?
Okay, wait 1 second. That's really interesting. So let's imagine you have the conversation with that particular artist, and you say, "Hey, could you provide a work in progress video as well?" And the artist says, "No, we can't. It's AI generated." Would that change your mind?
Potentially. I mean, it just depends again, like on how much the art spoke to me. If it's just
That's
some
interesting. That's like one.
if it's just some random account.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's just some random account kicking out like a random piece of AI art like once a year, yeah, I probably wouldn't
Or
care.
once a day, like it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, once a day would be different because that means someone's putting in the effort every day to create something.
Yeah, I like that's like I'm looking forward to the conversation we are going to have with Creepy Steve, because AI has improved so much that like it's hard to I would get an artist's perspective if he said that, obviously it needs different skill sets, but can it still be compared to like to sit down for 10 hours straight, create something, get your thoughts together, think about
That's the wrong
details
way
you
to
want to
think about it.
implement?
That's the wrong way to think about it. The consumer doesn't give 2 shits how long it takes you to make a thing. Okay. In the same
Yeah,
way,
I don't know about that. Like that's
no,
why I
they
want why I
don't
want to
care.
get different
They don't give a
perspectives.
fuck. At the end of the day, all that matters is that it moves them in some way. If you have an artist, let's say you have 2 artists, okay, and they both spend 10 hours making a piece, all right, and they hand you, each one of them gives you the piece, and one of the pieces you absolutely fall in love with, and the other piece you're like, yeah, I don't really like that piece. Are you going to buy it anyway because they spent 10 hours on it? No, you're not going to buy it because they spent 10 hours on it. That does not matter. What matters is that it moves you. And then if it moves you and there's a richness to the story, and then you go deeper and you find out, oh, wow, this piece moves me. And it took this artist 10 hours to create this piece. And, I built a relationship with right? Like the story goes deeper and deeper. That's when the 10 hours and the rest of the story matters. But if someone spends a bunch of time on something that you don't like, you don't care. So we can't pretend that the 10 hours matters just because you like the piece. It doesn't. It's never going to.
So okay, to put it straight, like, so for you personally or for collectors, in your opinion, it does not, like, the amount of hours spent for creation, it doesn't matter at all whether a piece is hand drawn or AI created, correct?
It doesn't matter to the extent that it moves you. Okay? it only matters to the extent that it moves you, right? If a piece was created by hand, or a piece was created from a coloring book, or using AI, if it moves you, it moves you. Then the rest of the story might be important. But first comes the visual. In the case of visual arts, like we're talking about visual arts specifically, could be a song, could be a movie, whatever. But in this specific case, we're talking about visual art. So if the visual moves you in some way, you might then be curious about how it was created. If it doesn't move you in any way, shape, or form, you're not going to care how it was created regardless. Okay? Now, within that subset of people that is moved by that piece of art, there are probably going to be some snobs that say, okay, well, I don't want it unless it was created by hand, or I don't want it unless it was created with AI. That is a potential reality that someone would have to face. Like that, there are people who will be like that for sure. But for the person who actually cares about the way that the artwork made them feel, the way that it was created is going to be much less important than the way that it makes them feel. And that's 100% across the board, every person.
I completely get that. I'm just trying to put myself into the position of an artist who still hand draws all his pieces. And if I was an artist and I spent so much time on creating pieces and putting them out, I mean, even if you manage to sell them, right? Like if you're having like a good reputation, if you sell all your pieces and make some good money, like if I saw an account putting out like, I don't know, 5 to 10 pieces a day, completely different ones, where you can basically see that the randomness, right? Like there's not even a creative process, but just putting out as much content as possible, and without having the creative process, the process of creation in general, and all the hours put in. And then if you put out a lot of artworks, to some degree, statistically the chance is going higher that one of those many pieces is going to be liked by anyone and maybe bought by anyone. Then it might feel to the artist like, why am I putting so much effort into the piece of art when other people can get the same reward with much less effort? That's what I feel like some artists might think. When it comes to my general opinion, like I have seen so many great AI created artworks that I loved and that did that to me emotionally, where I felt like, man, this is crazy. I love it. And I would probably not make a difference as well, but I'm just like trying to see it from an artist's perspective, and try to think about whether it would like influence the way I think about creation as well.
I mean, again, like all of this stuff is really easy to sort of dispose of when you just start thinking about how the world works. I mean, we can sit around and we can wish the world worked in a different way, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Right? Like my wife is one of the most incredible chefs, cooks that you'll ever meet. Like she grew up cooking. She loves food. She can take, like canned goods from the pantry and give you a gourmet meal. And that's just the way that she likes to do it. She's always done it that way. And when I cook, I grab a piece of bread and I throw some meat on it and I just eat it and I don't care, right? But she's going to make like this big production out of it. That's what she does, right? In both cases, I get to eat, right? But in the case of like her food, I get to eat much better food and enjoy the experience, right? So if she's around, I would prefer that she cooks. And, I don't have to throw a piece of meat on a piece of bread and call it a sandwich or something. But the point I'm trying to make is like, even at her level, like as good as she is, she's not growing her food. She's not butchering animals. She's not doing that. She's not building a fire in the backyard, to cook the food. She's using all the modern conveniences and she's shopping at the store. And the reason that she does that is because it gives her more time to focus on the end result, right? So you can be one of these people that's like, oh my God, it's hand drawn, or oh my God, it was AI, or this or that, the other thing. But at the end of the day, all that the consumer cares about is how it makes them feel. Okay? That's all they give a shit about, right? You don't get bonus points for making it harder, okay? Unless the end user decides they like the piece and they want to know more of the story. It's only at that point that the story matters at all. And this is the thing that so many artists get hung up on, right? And in talking to a lot of traditional artists about NFTs, believe me, I've heard this from so many different angles. It's ridiculous. And they all want to criticize AI. They all want to talk about the new tools. And my response to them is always is, listen, guys, and I'm specifically talking about comic artists here, not necessarily like one-of-one, like painters, right? But like comic artists exist to produce pages for publishers. That is why they have a job, okay? So if I'm talking to a comic artist and I say, hey, how much would it cost me to have you produce XYZ number of pages for me in this style? And they'll say, okay, well, it's going to be, X number of dollars per page, whatever, right? And then I say, okay, well, how long is that going to take? And they'll tell me, oh, I can do, 3 pages a week or something like that. So by the end of the month, we'll have 10 pages or something to that effect, right? And then if I'm a publisher, I'm looking at that, I'm going, okay, well, a comic book is 26 pages normally with ads and cover. So I need to produce 30 pages, counting the cover and the back cover. How many people do I have to pay to get the pages that I need to get the work done on time, right? The publisher only cares about getting the story done well on time because they need to meet a publication date and they've got to get the work out, right? They're not rewarding the artist for taking longer. So the artists who do it the old way, the slow way, are going to continually be left behind in an environment where they have to produce. The end, full stop. It's a little bit different when you go to one-of-one stuff, right? But even if you're a one-of-one artist, you want to produce as much as you possibly can because you're only getting paid one time on that piece of art, right? And unless you're in the upper echelon of artists, you're not getting paid $10,000 per piece. So you can't afford to produce one piece a month. You got to produce like one piece every couple of days, every few days. You got to get another piece out, right? So like I know painters in the real world who will paint a 4x6 canvas and record the whole process, and it'll take them a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks to complete the canvas with all the details. But they'll sell it for 15 grand, right? That's not happening in the NFT world. That doesn't happen. These artists are selling stuff for $50, $30, $100, $80 in most cases, right? So they need to be able to produce artwork as quickly as they can, and it needs to be good, and it needs to constantly improve. And to be honest with you, like a lot of the real world stuff is way better than the digital stuff because the real world stuff has been done by people who had to learn proper technique using pen and paper. So when it translates to the pad, it's a little bit easier for them to get in more detail, to get the work done quicker because they're used to working at a quicker pace, at a different pace. So what I think people have to let go of is, especially artists, is that your consumer doesn't give a shit about how much time it takes you to do a thing, right? Just like I don't care if it takes Ford, 60 years to create a car or 6 minutes or 6 hours for it to roll off an assembly line. I just want it to work when I get it, right? And we can sit here and we can talk about, okay, well, that's not art. Or we could say, okay, well, whoever created this system was a pretty good artist and engineer because the way that they did it ends up with a beautiful result for people. And they do it very, very well. And they do it over and over and over again. And in some way, you have to realize that when you're an artist, you're a one-man assembly line. You're a one-man production line. And while you might have in your mind the best artwork on the planet, until it touches someone's soul and to the point where they're willing to spend money on it, they're not going to care how you created it. So your first obligation to yourself is to get it created, get it done, right? That's job number one. And then if you want to start, dabbling in the this technique or this technology or that iPad or whatever, that's okay. But your first job is to get it done and get it done well. And this is the thing, I think, that if more people understood, they wouldn't get so hung up on, oh, well, this is going to replace me, that's going to replace me. No, not necessarily. What's going to replace you is your work being shitty. So don't do shitty work and you won't be replaced. It's really that simple.
Well, there's one point I disagree with. I do think there are collectors who, as a matter of principle, simply won't buy AI generated art. But I also believe that we'll eventually reach a point in the future where it just no longer matters whether something was created with AI or drawn by hand. So, but this is a conversation we are going to have this Friday, actually. I'm definitely curious to hear some different perspectives on this. And it's great. I mean, I know that many artists out there have maybe different takes, maybe similar takes. I'd love to get collectors' perspectives on this as well. And yeah, this should be it on that particular topic for now. Now we just want to jump a little bit into what's going on in the GoodFellas universe. And as we have mentioned inside the Discord, we are currently doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff. So we got the website revamped, we got all the interviews uploaded. I'll get them into the right format. We will have Muna Luna's interviews up there already. We'll get Lilia's and Julia's interview up there as well. And then, and this is for anyone holding the bonus pieces, all 4 bonus pieces from Maria from the World Cup series, you are now able to submit tickets in the Discord in case you hold all 4 bonus pieces. So you are eligible to receive the final bonus piece. And yeah, that piece will be distributed probably by Thursday. You should have it by the weekend at the latest. And we've mentioned and spoke about the World Cup bonus piece on the last Spaces with Maria. So if you haven't listened to that yet, definitely go ahead and check that out again. She gave us a little glimpse of what to expect and the way she created that particular piece. And then, as mentioned, we will have the Spaces session with Creepy Steve on Friday, later than usual. Actually, let's see, 6 hours later than we usually go live. It's going to be afternoon for most Americans and around midnight for most Europeans. It would be great to see you guys around there. And yeah, Jason, tell us a little bit about what you're working on this week.
Yeah, well, you already mentioned it. We got to get Maria's piece out, so we'll be minting that guy or that gal pretty soon, actually. And of course, we've got some code dropping, and I'll be putting up some updates in Discord for that as well, both to blocks and to Pinstripe. And then, of course, we've got the rewards system that's being developed right now. And then what else we got going on this month? A little bit of travel toward the end of the month. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just going to be production around code and, of course, getting out these bonus pieces. And that's pretty much going to be my week and probably my next few weeks, actually.
Awesome, man. Yeah, so a lot to do behind the scenes. One little question, one little personal question I have, because you just mentioned it. Do you think my wife can take some cooking lessons from your wife?
I've never met your wife, but I'm sure she could take some cooking lessons.
Yeah, we can like a video, like we can have like a video course or something. That would be great because I've seen I've seen some food that you shared on your timeline, some sourdough bread and all that stuff that looked pretty good, and I know that your nutrition is really on point. So would love to see that, man. Why haven't you invited me for dinner yet?
Yeah, we could definitely do that. Well, you know, the sourdough thing is really cool because, again, like coming back to the whole artist thing, right? Like you can buy sourdough off the shelf, you know, it's made by a machine.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Christina makes hers by hand, of course, and it takes her like a week, you know, because you have to let the dough ferment. and all this kind of crazy stuff, right? So she spends all this time all week making the sourdough bread, and then she has a list of buyers, and she'll sell a few loaves of bread every week to different people who want to have that specific experience for the artisan bread, right? And to them, in that specific case, because they've tasted the bread and they've seen it and they know how good it is, they want more of it, but they're not over here like praising her because she spent all week making it, right? They just want they want it because it tastes good. It serves them in some kind of way, right? Like this, again, coming back to that whole conversation. If you tell them, hey, it took like 15 hours to make these 6 loaves of bread, they're not going to say, okay, well, let me pay you double. They're like, awesome. Well, thank you. I'm going to enjoy it. Right. And that's just the reality of the situation. Right. But, yeah, she's really good with that stuff. And I mean, if you want to jump on a video call, I'm sure she'd be more than happy. Like, she'll literally talk your head off about food for days on end if you let her. So we can absolutely arrange that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely an art to baking and cooking as well, right? Like when I hear the magic that happens when sour like dough bread is being created, and it takes like, well, how long does it take? Like, what did you say? Like weeks or something?
Well, if you're starting from scratch, it can take weeks because you have to develop a starter, like a culture. You have to develop a culture of, like little bacteria or whatever. But once you have that, you can basically use it. You have to ferment it, and you have to basically create more of it so that you have it to bake, right? And so you have to basically use your starter to create more dough, and then that dough has to ferment and sit around, and then it can be baked, and it has to be baked in a certain way, using certain tools, or it won't come out right. So it can take, a few days to get the loaves done. And then if you add up the time that you spend, you're going to spend probably, 8 or 10 hours. She does like multiple loaves, so she'll spend more than that, 10, 12, 15 hours a week making multiple loaves of bread for different people. So it's a very long, process. But again, like nobody cares about that. They just want it to taste good, right? And so yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty similar to you in that regard. I'd just put some meat on a piece of bread and pretend it to be a 5-star dinner.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like the whole point, right? Anything done well is art. It's not just what's created visually. The guy who comes to your house and trims trees or does your yard work, if he leaves it and it's absolutely beautiful, he's created a work of art, right? He did it well, or she did it well, whoever, right? So whatever you're putting your heart and soul into, whether it's prompting AI, like if you're spending hours on end trying to get the exact perfect prompt to create this image, I mean, there's an art form to that, right? It's all art when you put and pour yourself into it and you do it for you, so there's obviously going to be people who want to collect types and subsets of everything, or have types and subsets of everything, so there's nothing wrong with wanting, hand-drawn art, or there's nothing wrong with wanting to take your food to like these levels of primitive cooking, to have the experience of doing that. There's nothing wrong with doing that, right? It just comes down to, is the end result enjoyable? Was it done really well? Because again, that's the first thing that people care about. If it's not a good experience for them, they're not going to come back. They're not going to want more art. They're not going to want more food. They're not going to want you to cut their grass, whatever the thing is. Doesn't matter. So, I think if we just all go through the world doing our best, like literally putting our best foot forward, that's probably the lesson in all this. And as an artist, I don't really think you need to be afraid of AI. I just think you need to be afraid of being mediocre. Like, just don't be average. Don't be some mediocre also ran. Like, really perfect and hone your craft. Like, put yourself into it, pour yourself into it, and do it for you, right? And then if people like it, that's okay. But if you do it for you and you do it well, that's art.
Beautifully said, man. Beautiful, beautiful final words. And yeah, we'll continue this conversation on Friday. I'm hoping to see many of you guys around. I'm wishing everyone out there who listened to this episode a wonderful week. We catch you guys on Friday. Have a great one. Bye bye.
Take care, guys.